to fill the audience here before us. We appreciate you being here. In preparing for tonight, I gave some thought as to how important this is, and I'll simply say, every time there's an election cycle, having been there in the past, it's very simple to come with ambiguous answers that please all sides, often leaving one to wonder what their positions truly are. If I wish for one thing tonight, it is that we're able to get positions, specifics, and clarity on what each candidate is really about, what they truly stand for, so we don't have to treat politics like a box of chocolates. We want to know what we're going to get so we can go and cast our ballots accordingly. So with that, if all the candidates will bear that in mind, the more specific, the more clarity, the more you can tell folks what makes you different from your opponent, the more that all these voters, the audience, the listeners will gain from tonight's event. We're going to begin with, in the first hour roughly, we're going to be talking about one of the things nearest and dearest to all of us, all of those who are parents or grandparents, especially in these challenging times of COVID and political upheaval. The most important people that we can take care of right now are our families and our children. So there's probably not been an election for school board in the years that I can remember that is as vital and as important as it is today, because it's one of the last things that parents feel that they have control and direction over at a time when this terrible disease, COVID-19, has taken so much of that from us. So we really appreciate the candidates who are running for school board and have our children's interests at heart. And we are very, very fortunate because tonight we're going to have Lieve Finney with us, and she is the Center for Education Director with the Washington Policy Center. With that, Lieve, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, and with that, I'll take my mask off. So thank you for having me tonight. I'm here first let me tell you a little bit about our organization. I work for the Washington Policy Center, which is a free market think tank, and we have centers, directors that write and examine policy and put out papers on the subjects of government reform, the environment, small business, agriculture, transportation, and healthcare. And I have the privilege of working on education, and my role here tonight is just to bring to you some of my research and what I see to be the main issues facing the state as a whole. I brought some information about a few of the districts here just to help everyone up to speed on some of the numbers, which is also very useful for voters to know. So in Washington, we have 295 districts across the state, about 2,200 schools. We're spending $18 billion in this last year. There are about 1 million students in our schools in Washington state, and recently I was informed that 50,000 students have pulled the families of 50,000 students have pulled their children out of public education this fall. And that's a very significant number. That's 5% of the total. And there are many reasons for that, and that is part of the reason why there's so much interest in school board elections this year in this state. I've never seen so many people run for school board in my time, and nationwide. So just to give a few numbers and a little background, in 2021, the Ferndale public school system is spending $17,252 per student, and Bellingham $17,226 per student, and Blaine $17,745 per student. This is a dramatic increase in money for the schools. The legislature has increased the state property tax and local property taxes for schools. Just 10 years ago, the average statewide was about $10,000 per student. The test results are as follows. The Ferndale School District, 57.6% of the students met the state standard in English, 42% met the state standard in math, 50% met the state standard in science. Bellingham, the school district, 62% met the state standard in English, 46% met the state standard in math, and 50% met the state standard in science. Those numbers are pretty representative average statewide. About 60% pass the English test, only about 40% pass the state math test, and only about 50% pass the state science test. These test scores are essentially unchanged after having added billions of dollars to the public schools in money. The COVID school shutdown has really hurt the education of the children of this state and the families. A recent McKinney and Company study shows that students lost at minimum between 4 to 7 months of learning in reading and math. This learning loss must be made up, or the students will fall permanently behind in their learning. The content students are given is sequential. If there are gaps in their learning, students will not fully grasp the new content they're being offered now. Schools, in my opinion, should be focused on that, on assessing where the students are in their learning and helping them catch up. Congress has appropriated $123 billion in COVID relief funds for the schools. Washington State got $3 billion of these funds, and they have not yet been fully spent. It is very difficult to track how the schools are spending this money. Yesterday, there was an AP story from Wisconsin revealing that the schools there were using this money to buy sports equipment. Now, during the last session of the legislature this past spring, I followed very closely all the bills that were being introduced at the state level in Olympia, and there was no effort made to deliver some of this money into the hands of parents so that they could help parents hire tutors, do homeschooling, do all the things that parents had to do to scramble to fulfill the role of teachers during the COVID school shutdown. That would have been a good move for parents. It's obvious the one thing that we've learned from COVID school shutdown is that parents need more options to the system we have now. Instead, the legislature passed bills that will lower the quality of education provided to students in Washington. They passed Senate Bill 5044, mandating the training of public school staff and school board members in critical race theory, a false ideology invented by radical professors, which teaches that we live in a white supremacist society and children should be labeled as either oppressors or oppressed based on the color of their skin. This law violates our civil rights laws, our Constitution. I expect lawsuits to be filed against school districts and the state of Washington by the people who in their schools whose First Amendment and civil rights are being violated right now. There are other serious issues facing public education today. Fortunately, and that's the good news, Washington State is a local control state. Under our law, school board directors have the power to set policy for their districts. They hire the superintendents. If they don't like what the superintendents are doing and what the superintendent's administration is doing, the school boards have the authority and power to fire those superintendents. They can decide on the budgets. If the superintendents are spending more than they have, they can fire those superintendents. And they can approve or reject curriculum. There's clear law that gives school boards the authority to decide what books are being put in front of the children. And I have put those laws in a document that I brought copies of that's on the front table for you to read, basically laying out the RCWs that give these powers to school boards. And that's something very hopeful for our nation, because what we're seeing today is a renewed interest in the power of families and the public to control their local school districts through their power to elect the school board members. So with that, I think I should stop and let the rest of this wonderful meeting proceed. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Lee. Next, we're going to hear from Laura McKinney. She is a current Blaine School Board member, and she's going to share with us what it's been like, the challenges with COVID for the school system and for children and for teachers and others to do their job. Thank you, Laura.
Oh my goodness. It's actually hard to know where to start, because I think the challenges have evolved over the last year and a half for school board members, just as it has for parents, for children. When this all first began, March of 2020, I think initially everyone thought, okay, well, how are we going to get to online? It was just very tactical. We were responding very tactically. Particularly in Blaine, we have a lot of areas that it's very difficult to get internet connections. Kids just didn't have access. They didn't have laptops. We had teachers who had no idea how to manage an online presence. So it was a learn as you go, and it was a real scramble to try and meet as many different options and opportunities as possible. We were, as a school district, we were making photocopies of lesson plans and worksheets and all kinds of materials and information that would be available for pickup for parents for the week's lessons if they didn't have internet. We worked with local cell phone providers to get hotspots and tried many different, being right on the border, tried many different providers to see who would have the best coverage. And we talk about funding, that was to support a lot of these efforts. It went to paying for hotspots. And if anyone has had to manage internet on a cell phone hotspot, you know how difficult and quickly you use up whatever data options you had. Then you're sort of lost. And then we also had a challenge with Chromebooks and laptops and personal devices and what worked and what didn't work. And we had 3 children at home during that time, and we had cable internet. And as soon as all 3 of them got online, it was like dial-up. I mean, we were back in the dark ages, and the kids had been so ready, so prepared. We tested everything, but as soon as you went on, it didn't work. And we were in a good, we had no reason to believe we would have any troubles. So it was troubleshooting from the very beginning, and it was just constant. And frustration from parents was so understandable because we had it ourselves. On our school board, 3 of us are parents of students in school actively, and at least one member has grandchildren in the school district actively. And it was a learning curve for all of us. And then you have teachers who, at varying levels of even desire to learn how to use the internet. So the anecdotes from the kids, some teachers would just sort of log on once and then disappear and, oops, I had trouble with my connection. Here's your assignment. So it was a challenge for everyone, and we thought, well, we'll just get through to the end of the year. We'll just try to make it. But of course, all the other activities and parts of school that are not just the learning parts, losing the activities for sports was huge. Just to have kids outside and being able to run around and see each other. The isolation was devastating for the kids. The senior events for the seniors, these were times, and it is one thing, I think, for parents, because many of us experienced all of those events. So we really knew what we felt like the kids were missing. They didn't know. Many of them, without having had it happen before, they weren't quite sure what they were missing. So we did the best we could to make as many of those events possible as possible, given the ever-changing, constantly evolving rules and regulations and restrictions, and trying to be as creative as possible. And through all of this, you sort of you figured, well, it's just a couple of months, if we can get back into school, we'll pick it up. The kids they're quick learners, we'll catch up. And then we get through the summer, and we've got all these great plans. We're going to make it. We're going to do it. We'll be back in school. We'll be in person. We'll have some level of contact with children. And then, lo and behold, right before school starts, the rug really gets pulled out from under us, I think, as an organization, as a district, as parents, as children. And that was really devastating. And that was really, I think, the beginning of the internal challenges that we all started to feel, because there was not, when on a school board in Blaine, there's 5 of us, and we work as a cohesive unit. Things that get voted on, it has to be majority rule. Consensus carries the day. And so as individuals, we got a lot of contact and a lot of outreach from parents, from teachers, from just frustrated community members. And it was the first time, I think, that we as individuals had that much directed at us. And you know, it was such a learning curve. And I will say too that generally speaking, I mean, I've been on the school board for 4 years, and I still learn new things that I didn't know that we can do, that we can't do, that we're supposed to do. The training for school board, I think my first meeting, you know, we had the elections in November. My first meeting was December to be sworn in, and I did my swearing in and sat down, and we started voting. And I just was so surprised that I was unprepared. I was unprepared for exactly what was required in being a school board member. And so I would have to say that's one of the biggest challenges I've continued to feel for 4 years, is just not understanding from the beginning what we needed to know, how to do, when to do it, what our responsibilities were, what our rights were as individual board members, what we did as a group. And we do have a state organization, there's training available, but like everything else, you are learning as you go, and everybody is at a different level of understanding because we all come onto the board at different times. So throughout the 4 years, you know, people rotate in and out, and then you're starting again, and you got to bring people along, and everyone's just a little bit confused, So when you're getting a lot of direct outreach from community members, and we're also not allowed to speak directly to each other more than one-on-one or 2 at a time. At any time you have 3 school board members, you have a quorum. So we are not able to get together and talk outside of an open meeting forum, which is, you know, the rules are there for a good reason. The rule is there so that business doesn't get conducted without the public being able to witness it, to participate in it. But that does make things a little difficult if you have new school board members who don't quite understand how this all works, and just sort of sit in a school board meeting, and they're just following along as we go. So that was a challenge, and everyone felt so guilty and upset about, should I respond? If I get an email, should I not? But if we all respond, then it's policy making. Then if I respond and it's different than what from someone else says, then it's conflicting information, and we are supposed to be working together. So that was all very challenging, and we were constantly trying to figure out how do we navigate that. Also, we had a new superintendent who really came on board beginning of the school year of COVID. So we were trying to get to know each other in all of this, and then everything went very strange, and it was hard for us to develop relationships, hard for him to develop relationships with the rest of the teachers. And you know, I think we can all at some level agree that going virtual, while it has some of its advantages, you know, you can work from anywhere, you could be wearing a nice top and wearing your pajama pants, and you know, you could roll over, as the kids would do in the morning. They would roll over and turn on their phone and be like, oh, I'm at school now. So some advantages, but some real disadvantages, because we've lost our ability to interact with each other. And, you know, and wearing masks even, you lose an entire sense. I mean, your ability to see and interact and have facial expressions and smile and feel someone else's body responses. It's a tremendous loss in how we interact with each other in these very difficult situations. So, I mean, the challenges have been many, and I think they've been felt by a lot of people, and they're not over. Where we thought we would be beyond some of these things, we find ourselves very deeply in the middle of it all, and then to have our ability to make decisions absolutely removed from us. I think, you know, Leaf has some of the Washington State Code that talks about our local rule, but during these emergency powers, we have had that removed. And it's very crippling in the sense that we are right here, we're elected, we're responsible to our constituents, but we don't have the ability to make any of the decisions that are critical and are upsetting and are fundamental to being able to run a school district. So I guess I didn't even see a clock. Am I totally over my time?
No, you were.
Am I right on? I mean, I guess I
Like
feel
a
like I've
good
just
teacher, you're
ranted
right
for
on
the
time.
last 10 minutes, but I mean, I hope, and as we're all going to now talk about why we think we should be on the school board, I mean, I just hope I can set a little bit of the sense of frustration, dismay, good intentions that I think everyone on the school boards feels. I mean, no one that I know of that I've spoken to sort of joined a school board to wreck the school system. But it really feels like at the state level, we have done a fantastic job of destroying public schools. And I'm so hopeful. I mean, I guess what else can we do? That we can repair some of that, but we have really made a mess of it. And I say we, and that's sort of the royal we. I mean, I would say the state has made a mess of it, and they have removed our ability to have an impact on how to fix it.
Thank you. So that was a valuable, insightful look as to what this past year and a bit has been. And with that, I'm going to transition to each of the other school board candidates. And the most important question for those of you who have yet to be on a school board, and that is, particularly at this time, why you're running for school board. And we're going to start with Tanya Hickman, and she is running for the school board in the Linden School District. Thank you, Tanya.
Is it on? Yes. Yeah, so I'm Tanya Hickman, and I'm running for Linden School Board. And the reason that, well, the backstory is we had a daughter last year that graduated, and she did Running Start. And she just had a difficult time trying to learn online. She really had enjoyed engaging the professors, and it was no longer an option. If you tried to email for help, you didn't get anything back for like days, and the assignment was already due. So there was just that struggle, and I just watched her I just watched mentally how she struggled to just stay engaged, and she had complete academic burnout by the end. She did well, she got A's and B's, but she just decided, I can't do any more school for right now. I gotta take some time off. And just, yeah, the issue with sports and not being able, like the hypocrisy of it all, like I can hang out with my friends outside of school, but I can't do things at school. And the mask mandates didn't make sense. They were sometimes strictly enforced, other times not. And just the overall just notion that we had lost a complete year, actually more than a year of education. So the reason I'm running also is just because I felt like my choice as a parent was being stripped away from me. Just how I parented. What I saw was impeding my kids' ability to learn and be distracted when they had already lost a year. And I'm talking about the mask mandates, which are not a very popular subject, but they are a necessary conversation that we need to continue to have. And I'm sure that Laura could speak to this more, but just the legal aspects of it. And like Leave said, like, why can we not engage in that conversation of our civil liberties being stripped of us? And it's frustrating, it's disheartening, it's disenfranchised families and kids. And all the while, you hear on a national level all the things that are going on, like the recent, Senate hearing that Biden's education secretary refused to agree that parents are and should be the primary stakeholders in their kids' education. That's just kind of seems a little bit insane to me, that it's not just common knowledge. The government is not responsible for the outcomes. Parents are. You know, it's parents' privilege to walk alongside their kids, to encourage their kids, to develop good relationship with teachers for better outcomes. And just with the mental health issues, like there's just so much that's being overlooked because of COVID and conversations that aren't being had, that I'm just afraid that there's going to be more mental health issues as a result of just continued COVID and just continued just not being able to be free to just go to class and get a basic education, which is the paramount duty of our Washington State Constitution. Education is a very important piece, and it needs to continue to be an important piece. I also ran out of concern regarding curriculum that's being imposed on kids, the shallow ideology of comprehensive sex education that adds to the destructive outcomes that plague our kids, that somehow our highest aspect of personhood is how we identify sexually. It's completely void of all the traits that encompass a person. It's not just sex education that's looking to over-sexualize children. At Meridian School District, they're trying out a new curriculum called Springboard, expecting that teachers will use it, and they're using novels such as The Eyes Were Watching God, a book about a teacher who rapes a student and gets her pregnant. The book contains sexual battery, profanity, racism, racist terminology, drug and alcohol abuse. And I know you all remember what happened with Bellingham School District in a first grade class where they were reading I Am Jazz, and just the comprehensive sex education that promotes materials that plant thoughts and ideas in the minds of little children, that teach them that their sexual identity is a choice. Statewide mandates also with the diversity, equity, and inclusion in our education system acts on the assumptions that us parents are bigoted and intolerant, and so forcing anti-racism, which is racism, tells kids of different ethnicities and race that unless white people constantly check their privilege, minority people can't succeed. And I can't think of anything more insidious to instill in our education system and to put on minority populations in our districts. So working with kids also should just be nonpartisan. I don't like hearing the stories that kids are coming home and their teachers talking about who they voted for and who they put on their ballot, because it stops discourse from happening, and it shuts kids down from being able to share an opposing view. And I know that my oldest daughter felt this way in college. She felt like her grades were going to be affected if she offered an opposing view. And the idea of schools is to give them critical thinking skills, to create open discourse where they can have open conversation, and not someone in a position of authority, like a teacher or a professor, to instill their views, which kids ultimately don't want to go against because they want to do well. I think I also do not want to hear teachers promoting their vaccination status, because to me, as a nurse, that's giving medical advice, and that's not their place. We need to quit promoting the bigotry of low expectations in our classrooms. Like Leaf said, we need to go back to the basics, meet like collectively where everybody's at, and go from there. Why do we want to continue our path forward when we've already lost a year? So we need to acknowledge that and kind of assess where everybody's at and do our best to get everybody back on board. And that's unfortunate for kids who can, for whatever reason, were able to stay ahead. But I've heard from numerous teachers the fear that there's going to be a huge dropout rate. And our society shouldn't have to worry about the dropout rate that is potentially going to happen. We already have struggling workforces and can't find employees. We need to quit focusing on immutable characteristics. They don't define a person. And it's families and not government programs that will always be the child's best lifelong support to productive and positive functional outcomes for any individual. So I'm running just to protect our public education, to just be a voice for those parents that feel the way that I do. I want to keep programs like the Be the One mentorship that is able to, because sometimes you can say something to your kids that when someone else says it, it's all of a sudden they can hear what they have to say, and it's beneficial. And those programs, now require those people to be vaccinated. And it's just disheartening, because there's a lot of kids, like I said, that are struggling with mental health issues. And I also want local programs like Backpack Buddies and Open Hands to be a part of the conversation to provide resources to struggling families. I want to keep our community involved in being part of our local issues and being the answer to those issues. We have kids coming from homes where poverty exists and the primary reasons are mental health issues and substance abuse. I want our counselors in the schools to be available to struggling kids and get them the resources that they need. I want to keep having discussions with local school board about mask mandates and if vaccines are going to be required in the future. And what will our options be as parents? We need to stop the fear mongering that's associated around COVID-19, as no one denies the validity and the potential outcomes associated with COVID, but we need to continue to move forward and foster growth, as we've already lost, like I said, a year and a half of school. And it would also benefit our district to know where the legal counsel stands on ensuring citizen rights in regards to our state and federal constitution. So that's pretty much it. It's more just humbling because when people reach out to me because they know that I'm running, I don't have all the answers, like Laura said, and it's especially in a time like COVID. But I just think education is about teaching kids. Like, it's not rocket science. If a science teacher can teach science, a math teacher can teach math, a literature teacher can teach literature, and we need to stop with all like the gross over-sexualized curriculum, and parents need to get involved in committees. I just want to bring back the parental involvement in schools. I think I'll end with that. Yeah.
Thank you, Tanya. For those of you who may have just joined us, in the radio audience, you've just listened to Tanya Hickman. She's running for the Linden School Board. Prior to that, we had Laura McKinney running for re-election of the Blaine School Board. Next, we're going to hear from Rachel Butler. She's a candidate for the Blaine School Board. Why are you running, Rachel?
Thanks.
You're welcome.
It's not Rachel. My name's Rocky, and it's actually Rochelle.
I
If
apologize.
you're reading it, that's actually why I go by Rocky, because everybody
Thank
calls
you,
me
Rocky.
Rachel.
I apologize. Mike apologizes. Thank you.
Well, I'm Rocky, and I'm a mom of 3 kids currently in the Blaine School District. I have a couple in middle school and 1 in elementary. Is this better? Yeah. Okay, cool. I gotta get the broke one. I'll just move in. But I have 3 kids in the district, and before I kind of go into more about why I wanted to give you guys just a little something about me. In 2009, I had the second best time of my life having my second kid. And my other child was only 2 years older, so I thought I knew everything. And I thought that everything was going to be just grand. Everything was going to be normal. My last kid was normal. Everything was fine. And then my child started to grow. And my kid was absolutely a genius at everything building, everything to do with puzzles. But you couldn't get my kid to speak, not even by the age of 4. I was told by doctors, she just doesn't have anything to say. You know, your kid's too smart for a Head Start intervention. So I was kind of left on my own. So I moved from Colorado to Vegas, and I started kindergarten with my kiddos, and I did my research, and I was like, okay, I'm not gonna go public school. I went to a charter school, and my kindergartner was expelled after 6 weeks. Not because my kid was fighting, not because my kid had any sort of failing grades, but because my kid was distracted one too many times on the way back from the bathroom and ended up in the middle school section where they were building cool things. And they said, our school is not a daycare, take your child elsewhere. So I did. And that's when I entered public schools with my children. And I met somebody who changed my life, because the school counselor was an amazing individual. She took weeks to really get to know my child, and she asked me the very question that I had been asking professionals. She said, "Do you think your kid has autism?" And I was like, "I've always thought so." So that really started a journey of me having to learn how to advocate for my child in an educational or just in a life setting in general. And I have found, between moving through several states, that each school district is very unique in how they handle children with special education needs. My child has had a much better experience here because we did our research, and Blaine was the one that everybody said was the most inclusive, both for kids with disabilities and LGBTQ, which is important for me and my partner. And it saddened me because we made such great friends here, and 3 families have removed their kids from our school district and either moved away or gone to homeschool only. And they're special education kids, but they have more invisible disabilities, the ones that aren't easy to see, the ones that, the kid who doesn't know why the letters switch when they're trying to read, so they don't enjoy reading, or they get really frustrated with their teachers because they can't focus on something. So some of these parents just feel really, really alienated by the policies in place, a lot of them imposed by the pandemic and such. It made a lot of changes, and really hard for kids with special education needs to feel equal to all of the other kids and how they could be taught. And that was really what inspired me to run, because I have a great relationship and partnership with the teachers and the staff and the team that are caring for my kid, and every kid deserves that. Just because I know how to do that advocacy, I had to start somewhere. So my goal is really to be the bridge and to really help build all of those connections so that the students are helped, so that the teachers have the tools they need to help those students, and the parents have the say and the ability to feel like they can trust the teachers and the current school administration in order to be able to do that. So that's me in a nutshell. I don't have a fancy resume. I'm just a normal mom. I've done supervisor things, handling people of 25 to 40 people in a team. I've done regular, going to the kids' choir, orchestra things. So I may not be special, but I'm coming to all of you and hoping you'll consider me, because I have a passion as a parent, a compassion of a human, and I really want to come into this with an understanding level of a community member so that we can be able to balance everything. Thanks.
Thank you. That's Rocky Butler running for the Blaine School District. Our next candidate for school district, the District of Bellingham, is Mr. Philip Stockton.
Thank you very much for having me tonight. I think this is really important to get candidates out here so you can just hear a little bit about where they're coming from, why they're running, and some of the issues that are being faced specifically in the school districts that we're running for. A little bit about why I decided to run for Bellingham School Board is I started talking to parents in Bellingham who had a lot of concerns and issues of what was going on in Bellingham School District. They would bring up a concern, an issue. It didn't even have to be that big, and they were just brushed off, like a canned email back saying, "Oh, well, we'll look into it. Thank you. Goodbye." And I think that's a shame. And I wasn't ready to run at that point either. But as things started to progress, and we've seen some of the issues that have been national news for the Bellingham School Board, it really opened my eyes and I felt kind of obliged to run. There's things in our classrooms in the Bellingham School District, and there are things in the Bellingham School District libraries that many people in Bellingham, or in Whatcom County for that matter, have no idea they're there, but they're terrifying, and people should be angry if they actually knew. One of the things that has been in classrooms has been in the library in at least one school in Bellingham is a book called Not My Idea. And this book, I'll just share one page with you. It has a contract with what's supposed to be the devil with his hand out, and this is targeted at, second grade, third grade, and below. It says, contract binding you to whiteness. You get stolen land, stolen riches, special favors. Whiteness gets to mess endlessly with the lives of your friends, neighbors, loved ones, and all fellow humans of color. Your soul, signed below. This is not just in the libraries, this is in classrooms. Sitting there for any student to take and read, and I don't think that's right. I think our school districts should be teaching kids to come out of school, to be productive members of society, to have good character, to be able to live and work and be happy, to find out who they are while they're in school. This is political. This is not something kids need to be told and taught and have it pushed on them. It's political ideology. And I don't care what side of the aisle you are. I don't care if you're right, middle, left. We should not be forcing political ideology on our students. And it's a shame. And it's not just happening in Bellingham. It's happening all over Washington State. And parents are being ignored. They have real concerns. And as was stated tonight, parents are pulling their kids out of school. And I guarantee you, if more parents know about what's going on, they have lives, they're busy, they're working, they're taking care of families, they're doing tons of things. And if they know about this stuff, and I'm hoping to bring that to the forefront, more kids will be pulled out of school, and it's a shame. It is a shame. We have a lot of great teachers. We have a lot of great school board members across this state. We have a lot of great administrators, but this is wrong, and I think most people know that. There isn't much transparency and accountability in a lot of schools, specifically Bellingham School District. As I said before, I know parents who email school board, who email teachers, who email the superintendent, and they get canned responses back. And I aim to change that. I work for the school district, for the residents in Bellingham School District. I am not somebody special. I don't think that what I say goes. I think that I should listen and talk with all of the residents and try and make the school board inclusive for everybody. And I don't think school board members should push parents and students to the side if they have concerns. And like I said, it's not about what side of political aisle you're on. It doesn't matter. We shouldn't be teaching political ideology in school. And I think there's lots of issues that go along with this, and we're spending more money, I can guarantee you, on social causes and issues within our school district than we are on actually educating our children. So that needs to change. We need to prepare our students for the real world, for what life is going to bring afterwards. And I don't think I'm going in there to change everything. I just want to represent the parents and the students and the community in Bellingham School District. And that's all. That's all my job should be, and do it to the best of my ability. I know that was a lot for that one, but I'm also wanting to focus on trade jobs. I think that there's not enough programs and opportunities for specifically high school students to try and get apprenticeships before they even graduate. We have different programs where they can go to community college and get general education credits, which is great. And if you want to go to college, great. But we need to have more programs and opportunities for students to enter a trade, because they can make more money than a college graduate can in a shorter amount of time. And we need to be letting our kids know that, or let our students know that. And I think that's a very important part of what schools should be preparing our students for. And I really hope that you'll really consider me, because I don't want to do this for me. I don't want to do it for a political party. I want to do it for the parents and the residents and the students in Bellingham School District. So I would really feel honored if you'll vote for me on November 2nd. And I just wanted to thank everybody for giving me the opportunity to speak here today. Thank you.
You've been listening to Philip Stockton. He's again running for the Bellingham School Board. We have a few minutes left for the school board session, so I'd like to ask a very, very quick question. The largest number of stakeholders on the school issue are the students, the children. The largest lobbying group for those children are the parents. My question is simple, but may not elicit a simple answer, but I'm going to give you each 1 minute to answer the question. And I'm simply going to ask you to comment on parental involvement in schools. Take that whatever direction you want with 1 minute. I'll go in the same order. Laura, if you would go first, please.
I think parental involvement in schools is critical. Parents should not and should not abdicate their role in guiding their children and their futures. And I think that the schools have a primary obligation to engage those parents in how their children are doing, and in how they can provide the best opportunities for those kids to realize their individual potential. And that's one of the things that we've been working on for the past couple of years in our school district, and it got railroaded a little bit, but we're quite hopeful to continue down that road on helping kids come out of school productive with good futures.
Again, that's Laura McKinney running for the Blaine School District. I'm going to go down the table to Tanya Hickman running for the Linden School Board. Parental involvement, take it where you may.
Okay. Well, I think we do have excellent teachers in Linden, and they do attempt to work really hard alongside parents, but it's been difficult with COVID because of all the restrictions. But moving forward, as hopefully things relax a little bit, that actually, I'll just backtrack. There's actually something I'm thankful for with COVID. I really just feel like it's really shaken things up and woke up a lot of us parents that were just kind of complacent, and just kind of had kind of given that aspect of parenting to the teachers and administrators at the public school. And so on that, I just feel like there's now an opportunity, especially as part of the school board, to really reach out and just put the responsibility back on parents to say, you know, what do you want? What do you want to see happening? And kind of hopefully get more parent involvement, like I said before, on curriculum and kind of vetting curriculum and making sure that it's maybe posted online so people can see, families can see what's available and what the kids have access to. So just more parent involvement.
Again, that's Tanya Hickman running for the Linden School Board. And next, the same question, not a question, simply a topic with a 1 minute answer, please. Rocky Butler running for the Blaine School District.
So as a parent who was juggling those 3 kids the whole time during the pandemic, it was quite a change from when I remember going to school and what my parents were like. And I have to say that as a parent, I did enjoy finding out the new things that my kids were learning in different ways. And it definitely inspired me as a parent, and I hope that it inspires others to really pay attention to what your kids are learning. Because the first time my kid threw a Common Core question at me that was at like a 7th grade level, I was like, wait, what? So I would definitely say that parents being as up to date with their children's curriculums is super important, because otherwise we're not just going to have gaps for them, we're going to have gaps for us in communicating with them. So I definitely am all about parents being involved as much as they possibly can, because they're still going to have to live their own lives and be able to support their children. But I definitely feel like there's more availability with the technology we have now for parents to be more involved.
Thank you again. That's Rocky Butler running for the Blaine School Board. And last will be Philip Stockton running for the Bellingham School Board.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's really important to have parental involvement in any of our school districts. And I feel that can be up to the parent a lot of the time. If they have hectic schedules, the least the school should do is be transparent and put out information and let the parents know what's going on. If parents want to be more involved, I know there's always, going to be tension between people. So, we have to balance that as best we can. But parents, it's their children, and it's, the parents' job to raise them, not the schools. So as much as parents can be involved and see what's going on and actively participate in different curriculum and see what's actually being taught, I think that's very, very, very important.
Thank you very much. Again, that was Philip Stockton running for the Bellingham School Board. I want to thank all of you, including Lee Finney with the Washington Policy Center. And I would encourage you to look into the Washington Policy Center. A lot of the stats and whatnot are accumulated by the good efforts of those folks. So we appreciate you being here and all of the candidates. Thank you so very much. Just give them all a big hand. So we're going to transition now. We're going to bring up our port candidates who will sit at the table to the front, and our county council candidates will be at the top. Mr. Donahue will put your placards, your name placards in front. And at this time, I want to thank Dick Donahue and also Common Threads Northwest for making this possible tonight. It's a lot of work to put these together, particularly in these times, a lot of coordination, a lot of planning to make sure that not only are you safe, but also that we put a platform and venue together that gives as much information as possible to our voters. So, and I'll repeat what I said earlier. As the candidates come up, hopefully they are thinking about the differences that will really, really define who they are, to make it easier, being that these are nonpartisan positions, which should be the case, but easier for voters to be able to distinguish one from the next. And also, it's important to note, we don't have all the candidates that are running here today. All were invited without exception, and we appreciate those who did make it for a variety of reasons. Some may not be here, but most importantly, we want to emphasize how much we do appreciate those candidates who did agree to attend and have given their time this evening. So at this time, I have one candidate up here, but I know there's more out there. Please. So, and what we have are county council candidates and Port of Bellingham candidates. We have a number of questions prepared. And what I'm going to do is, as the questions come up, some will pertain both to port issues and county council issues. And if you would like to comment on any of these, whether you're running for port or running for county council, just signify to me by raising your hand, and I will lead off with what I think may be appropriate for a particular race. But if you want to comment and you're in another race, i.e. port, council, that's fine. Are all our candidates here? I know I saw Mr. Bell earlier. Oh, okay. Here he comes. So, and we're going to run till 9 o'clock tonight. I want to commend the first group. You guys are right on time. You would all make great teachers. Everything was very precise. No one was left on the playground at recess and the class held up. So we have 3 candidates for county council, and two candidates, and they are Tyler Bird, and Tyler Bird is running for the position in the, I apologize, District 3, and also we have Kamal Bashu. How do I pronounce that correctly, Bashu?
Just the way you said it, like you would sneeze.
That's,
Bachu?
so I was right on. Thank you so much. I've been practicing for years. And he's running for the Whatcom County Council at Large position.
Yes, sir.
And if you missed it earlier, I'm going to address questions either to council report, but if either candidates for either race want to jump in, just raise your hand and I will certainly call on you. So the first question that I have for you, and incidentally, these are not my questions, these are questions prepared by other individuals. A lot of thought went into these, but here we go. For a few years now, we have seen constant repeat of the 6-month moratoriums prohibiting new construction at Cherry Point. This has blocked existing production facilities from doing process and continued work and upgrades and improvements, which would reduce their environmental impact and enhance their efficiency and economy. Rumors are that industries there may relocate to other parts of the country, taking these family wage jobs out of Whatcom County. The question to the council members initially, do you support, the council candidate, excuse me, do you support continuing the moratorium cycle, or will you seek to help existing industries in their efforts to improve and upgrade here in Whatcom County? Who would like to go first?
Taylor? Yeah, all right. Tyler Bird, Whatcom County Council District 3, running for re-election. This is actually a null issue at this point. So it has been an issue for 5 or 6 years now, but just, 4 weeks ago, we had a special session in August during our spring break. At that time, we voted to end the moratorium, and so there is no longer a moratorium in place. And the reason for that is because both the Cherry Point Industries and the contractors and vendors that work out there and the employees, they all got together with the NGOs and the environmental organizations on that side, and they worked together to kind of work through all of the different problems and negotiate the points, and came to a place where every one of them were calling us saying, hey, we want you to approve this and support it and vote in favor. And so it went from something where for the last 4 years I've voted against it to something where it passed unanimously on the council. But that's an issue that we've now moved by for the time being. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't bring it back up in the future to some extent with different wants or needs for additional restrictions and regulations. Possible to happen, but that's not on the plate or the table right now. To the flip side of that, though, BP has announced a $100+ million project. 200 million. Yeah, John, go ahead and say that.
$240 million project.
That was in the Bellingham Herald. Yeah. So not only have we completed that whole moratorium nightmare, but we're able to start moving forward again and creating jobs, out there in Cherry Point. So, woohoo, that's exciting, right? We need jobs right now.
So I'll segue the question a little bit differently. The second question is more appropriate in light of that, Tyler. Appreciate that. And they have asked, are you for or against allowing new industries to locate in the Cherry Point industrial area?
Do you want me to go again? Or do you
we'll let Kamal go.
No, I'm for bringing more jobs to Cherry Point area. And if you could bring in light and heavy industry, that would be fantastic. And also we could look into bringing in green job type of jobs at Cherry Point. So yeah, I'm for it.
Tyler?
Yeah, I got asked this a couple of weeks ago at the City Club, and I hadn't put a ton of thought into it at that time because I tend to be very much free market oriented, and let the market and people's buying patterns drive what industries and businesses that we have in our community. But I have put a bit of thought into it. I think that there's 2 real areas or 2 projects that we could look at right now out there that would be fantastic. One is warehousing and fulfillment centers. We have several of those going on right now in the county. We do not have enough warehouse space, and yet we have a deep water port here. We have rail, we have the freeway, we have the border. And shipping of products from online ordering is at all-time highs. Hey, you have all seen the container ships that are waiting out in the bay for weeks and weeks and weeks. Why can't we be offloading those here and distributing them in our community and creating jobs right here in Whatcom County instead of waiting for weeks out there to go to Seattle or Vancouver or LA? I think we do it here. The second, Alcoa. Terrible, horrible, unfortunate situation, losing 900 plus jobs that have been there for generations. What we can look at now, though, is why don't we take that plant and retrofit it into an aluminum recycling plant? All of the equipment's there. We have the people that know how to do it here in our community trying to find jobs other places right now. We're at a place where China has said, hey, we're not going to take your recycling anymore. So most of our recyclers are bundling up all the recycling that we put in place and taking it to landfills and throwing it away anyway because they can't get rid of it. So why aren't we investing in retrofitting that plant and bringing those people back to work, creating green jobs, creating manufacturing jobs, and creating a valuable product here that we know we need because it's so hard to get resources into this country right now from any place else. So let's become an exporter of recycled aluminum out of Cherry Point.
May I add something else to it too? I'll take a quick second here. As we all know that we produce blueberries and raspberries in our county here. Now, why can't we ship what, I just want to say what Mr. Bird was talking about. We have the Deepwater Port. Now, can you imagine shipping all of our stuff, all of our blueberries and raspberries worldwide from our own backyard and also be able to create more jobs and help other farmers there? So that's something I would also like to look into and support. So,
very good, thank you. Yeah. And again, any of the candidates want to speak to any of these issues, feel free. I'll focus council and we'll transition to Port, but if there's something you feel compelled to chime in, please let me know that. The Growth Management Act. We could spend days on this, but we're going to be short on the question. The Growth Management Act has constrained new residential and commercial industrial building in the county, making it difficult to provide for affordable housing and for new economic development, business, and the structures that they need. Do you have any solutions or ideas to address the GMA dilemma? Whoever wants to go first.
Yeah, this is a whole thing we could spend weeks and years on.
But we won't.
But we won't, right? I'll pick one little thing here to start with. Food deserts. Who has heard of food deserts in Whatcom County? Okay? When you hear about them in relation to what the Birchwood district down there, where the old Kmart is, the Jaegers, that area, right? Like, that's a food desert because the grocery store that was there, the community says, hey, it's gone, and we need another one that can go in there and fill that location. Well, listen, if you live in downtown Bellingham, I don't think it matters where you live. Regardless of where your house is, you can find pretty much 5 grocery stores within a mile or 2 of your house. If you want to talk about food deserts, let's talk about Whatcom County. And let's talk about East Whatcom, Kendall, Glacier, South Columbia Valley, the Acme. You have to drive 30, 45 minutes to get to a grocery store because the GMA will not allow us to have facilities larger than a certain square footage out there. And that's why none of the grocery stores are able to make it, because they can't get the economies of scale they need to offset the structural costs. Those big grocery stores, they bring all those products in, and it offsets all the real estate and those the costs the business has, the fixed costs, right? But when you're a tiny store, you don't have that opportunity. So your only option is to bring fewer products in and raise the prices. But now, who's going to stop at your store versus driving another 20 minutes to get access to 3-4 times the number of products at 20 or 30% off? Hey, there's a reason the grocery stores in the county can't sustain themselves. If you want to talk about a food desert and a problem that we need to solve, we need to fix the GMA so we can actually bring grocery stores and supplies to the people in our community that sometimes go 2 weeks without power in the winter due to weather outage or power outages and storms. That's the real issue. But that's just one tiny small problem that we're having with the GMA. There's so many more that we could go on that are in some cases even worse.
So what I would like to look into, some of the useless codes that we can scrub. I would like to support that and make them way that a regular Joe like me could read them and understand them. Because right now, when you go to the county planning, you'll go in and you come out pulling your hair. It's like, what the heck did you just say here? So I would like to look into some of those codes that if we could get rid of them and scrub them. Recently, my brother and I, we just started building a new house. The first thing we had to do, even before we could even get a permit, we had to show the county a stormwater runoff plan. $8,000 later, we were able to get our permit. So that's another added cost that, yeah.
That's
Stormwater
cheap
runoff
compared to
plan.
everyone else.
Yeah, it had to be, that was just the stormwater engineer plan I'm talking. So just that, so, yeah, there's areas that I think I would definitely like to look into and get rid of some useless codes.
Sorry, that's a bad joke, but that's a ton of money. It shouldn't be that way.
Yeah.
But there's another project I heard of where they had to spend $400,000 to bring water and sewer to their project. It's absurd. So you're absolutely right, Kamal. You're 100% right.
That segues well to a question that is pertinent to address our port candidates with as well. Part of the port's charge is economic development, probably the primary charge, while protecting the assets of our port assets, et cetera. In order to bring business to Whatcom County, people have to have a place to live. That goes right back to the Growth Management Act and the ancillary challenges it presents. Do you, as candidates for Port Commissioner, have ideas, solutions, input as to what we can do to provide additional housing so those companies have the ability to house and draw employees?
Well, go ahead, Ken, because I know you've been hitting this one pretty hard.
And you're listening to John Huntley, and he's going to yield first to Ken. Sounds like.
So my name is Ken Bell, and I'm your incumbent Port Commissioner from District 2. And this is the one thing I will say. We sat down and we recently brought in Southwest Airlines into our airport, which was a major accomplishment for the Port of Bellingham to bring a major carrier for the first time into Bellingham. As the staff from Southwest addressed us, the first question they asked us was, do you have the housing? Do you know the impact we are going to have on your community, and can you handle it? My answer was no, we don't. And from the port standpoint, we look to the county council, lobby the county council, and the city council. Currently, we have urban growth areas in the cities that have not been expanded. They're in existence today. So the question I have is, why have an urban growth area if in a time of need you're not expanding into the urban growth area? The reason the comprehensive plan put in place urban growth areas is for when you had emergencies and you had needs, you had a place to grow. And it was a long-term plan to put that in place. And yet we have yet to expand into two major urban growth areas here in our city. We have no control over that as a port. We have none. All I can do is yell or point it out. But the county, the city, that's where the lobbying begins with housing. As far as the port properties go, we have a commitment on our waterfront to do 10% workforce housing, which we recently just started to do. You will find by the end of this year construction going on with condos on the waterfront. You will also find workforce housing along Cornwall Avenue with a project we call the Millworks, with the Whatcom Community Foundation to, I've got the wrong foundation, sorry, Maura, where we're going to put in 90 affordable housing units along our waterfront. We've done our part. The port has stepped up to the table. We have fulfilled our obligations, and we will continue to do so. But the majority of the housing in this area needs to go into the county, it needs to go into the cities, it needs to expand into the urban growth areas, and they need to be responsible for those decisions that they're making to make that housing available. The urban, I'm just going to expand a little bit more. The biggest frustration I have is the comprehensive plan, the reason for urban growth areas was to stop sprawl. What is happening today is just the opposite. You go to Blaine, you go to Linden, you go to Ferndale, you go to the outlying areas and you're seeing sprawl. because the city isn't doing what the comprehensive plan said, and that is bring growth into those areas that we have designated for growth. So where is the growth going? It's growing into sprawl in areas that are farther away from the city's urban center, which requires more transportation corridors, a longer commute to work. And really, the answer is grow into the areas where you designated growth. But the sprawl in Blaine, sorry, Mike, have you seen it?
Every day.
Have you seen the sprawl in Ferndale? Have you seen the sprawl in the county? It is urban, it is sprawl. And that's what the comprehensive plan was designed to stop. But it's doing just the opposite of that because we're not fulfilling our obligation at the city and the county level. And that's my final statement.
Actually, that's why I wanted Ken to go first, because I know that he worked with Southwest. I know that one of the biggest questions was that they needed housing. So I knew that that was kind of his pet peeve and that he had the answers for it. But it really goes back to what Kamal was saying, you know, and Tyler, is that, you know, we need to streamline. We need to streamline it. We need to get both councils, city and county together and work together and take these, you know, hurdles out of the way and get going. So it's there, it's ready to go. It's just nobody wants to do it. So,
Mike, can I add to that?
Yeah, so far we've heard on this particular question from Ken Bell. He's running for re-election in District 2 of the Port of Bellingham. And for those listening at home and don't see the placard, we just heard from David Huntley, who's running John Huntley.
I've been called worse.
District 1, running for Port Commissioner.
Yeah.
Please. Go
Ken
ahead,
mentioned
Tyler
earlier
Bird.
that the housing issue isn't the port's problem, that it's the county's problem. And he's 100% right about that. It's something that every county council candidate has campaigned on in every election that I've seen. I mean, it's a huge issue. If you look at University of Washington study that they do every year, we were the worst housing market in the entire state out of everything that they had analyzed for a couple years in a row. We've finally gone from a 0.2% vacancy rate to a 0.6%. Understand that an average balanced market is 5 to 7%, not 0.2 or 0.6. We have a terrible housing market here. Why is that? When you have every elected official that's running on your county council campaigning on affordable housing, it's because when they get up there, they don't actually do anything to solve the problem. You can go back to last year when we brought this up, and I asked us, hey, let's prioritize our goals. Let's figure out county council goals for the next 2 years. What are our top 3 or 4 things that we want to accomplish for our community? Let's set a timeline to that, and let's set like a measurable metric so we can see how we're doing in progress to it. And housing was the number 1. What they said, Todd Donovan, after 3.5 months of discussing this, says the county council cannot impact housing. We have no impact on housing. There's nothing we can do there. That's wrong. It's wrong. Especially when he gets up there and puts on his website that he's helping for affordable housing again. And when he campaigns at, you know, the debate on Tuesday night and says that he's helped pass things to accomplish affordable housing. But he can't tell you what it is because the only thing he's passed is a new tax where they're going to have a regressive sales tax that hurts lower income families more than anyone else. They're going to take that tax to do what with it? We don't know because there was no plan for it. Does that sound pretty common? Great title, affordable housing tax to build more affordable housing. But we're going to tax the low income to build housing somehow. We don't know. We'll figure it out once we have the tax money. That's their only solution. Outside of that, his quote, it's not something we can do. We got to stop electing these people who don't want to show up and do the job. People like that. They've had the county council since 2012. Do you feel like things have gotten better? Has homelessness gotten better in this county? Has housing gotten better in this county? Do we have access to more jobs? Tell me, when they have the county council, the city council, the mayor's race, the executive, the governor's race, Olympia, DC, and the presidency at this point, what has gotten better in our country? They have that joke. The definition of an insanity is what? Right? Why don't we try something new? Sorry, this frustrates me a lot.
Thank you. Tyler Bird, who is running for District 3, re-election County Council. Kamal Bushi.
I just agree with everything that Mr. Bird has said here. Yeah, and we need to stop electing those people who are not here to do the job, and let's get rid of those people and bring in people who support freedom, bring in people who will support our community, and that's what I would like to do. So I'll leave it at that.
I will use an illustration. I would love to hear the county council candidates comment on this and perhaps support a situation that's evolving right now. An individual person, a member of Whatcom County, has a waterfront lot, has had the waterfront lot for roughly 30 years in a planned unit development that's been completely established over 50 years. It is one of 3 remaining undeveloped lots within the community, Birch Bay Village to be specific. He has been taxed at a valuable waterfront lot rate for the last 20, 30 years and has attempted to sell the product, and continually the buyers walk. Why do they walk? Because the Shoreline Management Division of Whatcom County Planning has stated you cannot build a bulkhead. There is no bulkhead on this lot. It is eroded about 20 feet thus far. You cannot build a bulkhead. You cannot import any material of any kind. You cannot anchor any existing material of any kind. It's gone. And the only way we would issue a building permit for that lot is if a geologist can demonstrate to us that a bulkhead will not be required for the life of a new home, which they deem to be 100 years. The situation is you have a owner who's paying taxes at the value typically of a waterfront lot, and this lot has essentially been determined to be unbuildable. They will not say that. They could perhaps pursue a takings law, but the cost and what is involved is pretty slim. What could you do, what could county council do to help a gentleman like that out, as an example?
Mike, that's BS. And unfortunately, it's not the only situation I've heard like that. I don't know who that is. If you're watching, or Mike, I think you probably know him. Yeah. Please call me. My council number and email is on the website. We've run into this issue a number of times in the last couple of years, and it's gotten worse in the last 2 years. The number even of approved applications that we saw that somehow got pulled back and unapproved after the fact for miscellaneous reasons has spiked. But have him call me because, unfortunately, that's a tough one. But either at the end of the day, he shouldn't be paying property taxes on it because it's zero value if you can't do anything with it, or we need to let him build. My preference is let him build. We need the housing. But this is why we need a majority on the council, so then we can actually fix the problem, right? And that's my hesitancy right now. I know I have limited actions being in a minority because 4 people on the council will refuse to do anything about this. But have them call me and we'll work on it.
And again, I bring it up as an example of people that feel their hands are tied in being able to create that next housing unit. Come on.
Yes, I feel like that's totally unfair to the person who is owning this lot right now. And either charge them no tax or let them completely, build a house on the property. So I agree with Mr. Bird here.
By the way, that's absolutely a taking,
yeah.
Right? When regulation is put in place that stops your ability to build, it takes the development value off of that land. That's a definition of a taking. Am I wrong here? Yeah. Exactly. They're probably 20 years old too.
Yeah. Next question. The city of Bellingham is in the process right now of banning future, if not current as well, use of natural gas in residence and commercial applications. Rumors are that there is a movement afoot to have the same thing occur throughout Whatcom County. And whether Port Commissioner candidate or County Council candidate, what is your position on the continued use versus a ban of natural gas?
I'll take that first. I think that's a moron putting that through. I think it's the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard. And would I like to see natural gas continue? Yes. Would I like to see it continue in the city? Yes. Hopefully. And Tyler, I don't know if that's been coming up in the county council at all, but hopefully it won't go out to the county. It's ridiculous.
That's John Huntley, who is running for the Port Commission District 1. Would you like, anyone else like to speak to it?
Yeah, I could, go ahead.
Again, a lot of these questions are just not port questions.
Right.
So it's a little out of our field, but clearly we have autonomy when we have independence, and if we're all hooked up to a grid, a single grid, when the grid goes down, everything goes down. So autonomy is just about everything, I think, in the way that we can function. And the more options we have for power and the more options we have for heating our homes, the better. And I'm just not a fan of that.
Mike, I tell you, I've heard the rumor. I don't believe that there's any merit to it. With that said, I wouldn't be surprised if there's not people out there talking about it that would love to see it. But it's not something that has come to the council as a topic of discussion in any way at this point. So I don't know how it would be sustainable either, right? I mean, when you live out in some of these areas, and you, even in Sudden Valley, I mean, we lost power for what, 3-4 days, year and a half ago due to the storms. I mean, you're out of power, and I don't even have gas. Right? I mean, I had a gas barbecue that I'm barbecuing our dinners on and a fireplace. So when you're out there and you lose power for a week or 2 weeks, that's your only option. It's that, or how do you eat? How do you heat your house and survive in the winter? It's not possible. I don't know how we could pass that. It doesn't make sense.
Mike, I'm going to weigh in just a little bit.
Please, Ken.
Just the comments. I've just been sitting here thinking, and it's kind of what my brain works. Think about the load on our system. As we move to electrified cars, and they are all in your garage, and every neighborhood is going to have 3 to 5 more cars in your neighborhood with electric power, the grid is going to need an upgrade. And if we take away natural gas, we don't have the infrastructure to make a move that dramatic. Yeah. The amount of money we'd have to put into the electrical grid just to meet the demand for electric cars that are being projected is astronomical. Imagine if they took natural gas off the table. Imagine the amount of infrastructure you'd have to put into the electrical grid to get that up to speed to handle the demand. And where are we going to get that demand, especially as we start to look at other alternatives for energy and taking away some of the hydropower that we have here in the state? I just don't see where we're going to get it.
Well, and even Puget Sound Energy, they echo the same thing, that they do not have the power to almost supply what we need now, let alone if they want to take away the dams and take away the natural gas and the propanes, and that way of heating it's just absolutely ridiculous. So.
And one of the reasons I'm asking questions of Port and county and council going back and forth, because the two integrate so much and they have to cooperate for us to move forward, particularly economically. And that brings up a question that reflects something that has happened recently. In light of the recent intentional oil tanker train derailment in Custer, just up the way, and previous failed attempts at comparable acts of eco-terrorism in Bellingham's waterfront and elsewhere locally, are you concerned about the probability of similar attacks on port or port tenants' property? And after the Port Commissioner candidates weigh in on that, I would like to hear council. Do you have concerns about future eco-terrorism and what things might be considered to prevent that?
I know a little bit about the derailment that happened just down the road here. It was an eco-terrorism. There's no doubt that those rail cars were they were unattached, or from somebody that knows what they were doing. And we've noticed that there's no real press bringing all that out. So do I think there's going to be more? Yeah, I do. I think there's going to be more, and it scares the heck out of me, because it's simply people that are going out because they don't like what maybe I like, and they're doing something very illegal, and they should be thrown in jail for years. And hopefully the two that they have arrested and convicted, which have not been put into jail yet, and I'd like to see how many years that they do get, but they should be, they should be in jail for 10 years, in my opinion.
I'm somewhat saddened by the fact that it's just us here and not our opponents, because you would see some very clear policy differences with some of the questions you're asking. These are not the typical things that we get in a forum. So I thank you, Mike, for bringing up some different topics. I happen to be in the oil spill cleanup business. We clean up contaminated soil around the globe. And there is no doubt in my mind that that train did not derail itself. That's number one. But really the biggest concern, and I think this goes to the heart of the question, is how do we get past politics and move forward into progress? We can't have a civil dialogue about issues in this country any longer. And everything is taken to an extreme to get your point across. That's the problem. We have a country that has lost the ability to communicate to someone you disagree with. I don't have a solution for that. That comes from the heart. But I just want to blow our horn here at the port. We have had an amazing ability to dialogue with everybody without that contentiousness. But if we don't solve that issue, we will continue to see people forcing their will from both sides of the political spectrum, because we don't have the ability to communicate and to dialogue as human beings and find the 95% of the things that we have in common and communicate about those and find the common ground. It's only going to get more contentious. We see it in homelessness. We can't have a civil conversation about addiction. We can't have a civil conversation about mental illness. We can't have a civil conversation about energy. We can't have a civil conversation. That's what's necessary to bring this dialogue to a head, is to get people around the table that can have that dialogue and stop this. Radicalism seems to be the order of the day, and it needs to stop.
Thank you, Ken Bell. Would either the council candidates care to comment?
So I would say, like, do I worry about those issues coming up again? Yes, I absolutely do. And how do we go about preventing those? That's going to be very tough, because law enforcement or anybody else, they cannot be there every time to prevent those things from happening. But I would dovetail what Mr. Bell said, that there's nothing out there that we cannot solve with a positive dialogue. It doesn't matter what side of politics you're on, we can find common ground and solutions. So there definitely has to be a dialogue to find better ways from all of those things from happening again.
Again, that's Kamal Bashu running for council at large.
The eco-terrorism, I think, is one thing, but I think domestic terrorism in general is a concern that we're facing right now. Hey, you started years ago with protests on the freeway out of nowhere that causing car accidents and unfortunately harming families, to what we see on the railways, to what we saw down in front of City Hall with the mayors. Running out the back of the place because they broke in the door. To now a personal concern. I have 2 boys and a wife that are at home, right? I live in the county. I have 1 law enforcement officer for my district, 1 sheriff's officer that has to do 1/4 of the county. So how long is it going to take them to get to my house? And now you have people showing up at elected officials' houses and screaming at them and hanging out in their yards and threatening them. I mean, that's a serious concern. But Ken's right. I mean, it goes back to dialogue. And honestly, I think that I hear this from both sides. people are frustrated because they feel like their local officials aren't listening to them. And that frustration is just boiling over and out into what we're seeing. And it's terrible. It really is terrible. And we need awesome leadership like Ken is showing and has talked about here, to be able to step up and show people this is how we talk to people. This is how we have those relationships. This is how we communicate effectively so that we don't get to those points. That's what we should be as a country.
Thank you, Tyler Byrd. An issue we're all seeing throughout Whatcom County, throughout the state of Washington, throughout the country is homelessness. We touched on that earlier today. Of late, one of the most prevalent things that is becoming an increasing problem in the city, on port property, and county property are, for lack of a better description, only so you know which are speaking, zombie motorhomes, we will call them. And these are homes that are typically unfit to be on the road, much less not in a containment area where the health requirements are met. Each day, there seem to be more and more in the back streets of Bellingham, of Whatcom County, and that includes through the port area. What would any of you suggest we do to alleviate or get that under control as it only gets worse? We are in a catch-22. We do an extraordinary job serving those who are challenged. Sadly, the catch-22 is more people are coming to our area because we do such a good job serving them. How do we fix that?
Ken, you want to go first? This kind of falls right into your experience. No, it really, Ken has amazing experience here, and I really can't go for it.
I feel like I'm monopolizing the conversation. So my background is, I come from a background where we put a private homeless shelter in the downtown core in Denver, Colorado, which is where I grew up. I was on the board of that organization for 30 years. I used to commute back and forth to go with the board. I was chairman of the board for 10 of those, and the solution was not government funding. It was a private shelter, ran with private dollars. People came in. We diagnosed what their issue was. If it was addiction, we made sure that they stayed clean. We made sure they had a job. They paid rent. We started to teach life skills that they had lost along the way. So if you couldn't cook, which you'd be surprised how many of them lost that ability, you got cooking lessons, you bought your own food. There's more dignity in a meal that you cook, a bologna sandwich you make yourself in a refrigerator, than there is out of a meal served across the counter. You can get a steak across the counter at a homeless shelter, but the dignity is in buying your own food, building yourself up, teaching yourself those skills, getting yourself out of addiction, and having a job. You have a job, you have work, you will find that you don't have time in your day for the addiction. It takes a secondary seat. It will still be there, and you have accountability partners for that. The biggest problem is the will to put that kind of requirement on people. I will say, first and foremost, you don't have any of those on port property. So let me state unequivocally, all of those motorhomes are on city property.
And why is that?
Because you have somebody that understands the issue. We were approached to do a lot of things on the port. Anybody who is going to put a tiny home or put any kind of homeless facility is going to follow those requirements that we just said. We work very closely with the Lighthouse Mission. They have got plenty of beds. They have the same kind of services where they train you, they will pull you out of addiction, and they have a surplus capacity. So we have got, I call it compassion without logic. We have got so much compassion as a culture that we have lost touch with the logic it takes to bring people out. Plus we've lost touch. We used to know who the guy was on the street, who was the drunk coming down the street. You knew who he was, you knew him by name. I can recall a guy named Leroy who used to come in and just panhandle. He was never going to get off the street, but I knew him by name because he was ours. He just lost touch with his family. Most of this is a lack of connection with family and friends. They've gotten to a place where they're desperate. So we have got to start treating the causes of those. Mental illness is the same. If it's a mental illness, we need to put the resources into mental illness facilities so that they're not on the street. I think the bigness disservice and the bigness indignity we give to mankind is to let them be drunk, mentally ill on the streets for one day. The greatest gift we have in life is time. We have time. You can waste money. You can waste, you don't leave the earth without that, but you only have a certain number of days. You are allowed to be drunk, high, mentally ill on the street one day. You have stolen time from a human being. My goal in life, right, is to get back that time to people who are losing it through addiction, who are losing it through drugs, who are losing it through any number of ways that they're not being gainfully alive on this earth. And really the goal is to try to give back those people that precious thing called time. And the reason you don't see it on the port is because there's a requirement that if you're going to come to the port, you have to have training programs, you have to have facilities, you have to have something. Otherwise, you don't get to come to the port. We had a city council activist who's actually a candidate now on our port property with a bullhorn. As soon as the mayor cleared out the city hall, they came down to the port property. There was a chop shop sitting on port property, a guy with a van. He was selling stolen bicycles out of that container on port property, paying homeless people to go steal bikes, bring them to him where he would pay them so they could continue to use. He would part out those bikes. They knew who he was. They were down on port property. They lasted about 3 days, but there was a city council, current candidate for city council, down there with a bullhorn saying, stay here. This is your property. You own this on the port. We cleared that encampment within a couple of days, which quite frankly is what should have happened down at City Hall, right? And I think it's also what is going to happen at the streets. The longer you let those sit there, the more entrenched they become. And again, we can't have that dialogue about homelessness and addiction and drugs and all the things to get people out of them as long as we're down here with a bullhorn telling people to stay, right? That's just not how you dialogue.
You've just heard from Ken Bell. Again, he's running for Bellingham Commissioner, District 2.
Yeah, I'd like to just kind of expand with what Ken was saying, especially with the Lighthouse Mission. You know, they do an amazing job with the homeless people, and they have this huge, great program. They've also got now an expansion that they want to do that would really, really help things out with the homeless and bringing them all the way through the different programs to get their lives back in order. You know, the problem is the Lighthouse Mission's faith-based, you know, and for some reason beyond me is that we cannot get money from the city or the county to direct dollars their way to help them out, because they're the professionals. The county and the city don't have a clue. You know, we don't have a clue how to deal with these kind of issues. So we need to direct money to the people that know how to deal with them. And you know, I'm a firm believer the Lighthouse Mission is a great spot to start and to really educate all of us in helping that out. I also believe that it's too bad that we have so many that are coming into this city, you know, they're calling them Whatcom County residents after 3 months. You know, if you talk to, many of you probably have friends as police officers, I certainly do. They're not Whatcom County residents. You know, they've come because they get free food and they get these handouts. So we got to make that a little more difficult, in my opinion, is that we need to take care of our own. We need to get them in the place that they can help themselves, but we don't need to take care of the whole state or other states. You know, they need to take care of their own. So I think that's a way to start.
You've just heard from John Huntley. He, again, is a candidate for the Port of Bellingham Commissioner District 1. County Council candidates, who would like to take this?
I'll take it.
So
I will talk about myself a little bit. You know, I moved from India, not knowing how to speak any English whatsoever. But what I did was, I knew that I had to go out and help my family, you know, because none of us spoke any English. So I did everything I could while I was attending high school to go out and find a job. I worked at McDonald's. Right after I got out of McKinney's, I went over to the mall, worked at an Indian restaurant, and scrubbed dishes because I knew I had to do something to help my family. So is what Ken was talking about, the will to do something. And also, we need leadership who will not just bend down just because the people are demanding, you know, who are coming in, no, we want it this way. You give us a tiny home because we demand it. I get that people need a place to live. What happened to the say, teach the man how to fish, not just give the man a fish? You know, if you cannot teach them life skills, you can throw all the money at this problem all you want, it will not go away. So we need leaders who will willing to take on this problem without getting scared from people who are making a lot of noise. And can we pass certain ordinances, rules that people cannot park their campers? I'm pretty sure we can. And Lighthouse Mission is a perfect place where people can go, and they have a very good way of tackling certain problems. I was talking to Hans a couple months ago. They have a very good approach to certain problems, mental health issues, and they really teach people life skills. You know, I was at the base camp, so they have this little coffee espresso stand. You know, you have to do something to earn that coffee. They don't just give it to you. You know, I think the price is about $1. If you cannot afford to pay $1, they want you to do something, do the chores or do cleanup around the camp. I mean, that's how you build, self-esteem for someone instead of just handing stuff to them. So I would say that we need to take that type of approach. And do we have resources here? Yes, we do. And I would also say, let's get Bellingham Tech College involved into this. Maybe there's a part-time courses that people who wanted to learn a skill, they have some part-time classes where they can go and learn, you know, welding, carpentry, or et cetera, things like that. So I think that's what we need.
Thank you, Kamal Bashu. Again, he's running in the council at large position. Tyler Bird, is your turn.
Good. I've spent a lot of time working on this at the council level for the last few years as well. The unfortunate answer is it's going to get worse. It is. And you look at where we're at right now, we're at 5% unemployment in Whatcom County. Our county health department is projecting another 20% loss of jobs due to these vaccine mandates. You're talking about potentially hitting 25% unemployment. That's what we saw in the Great Depression. We've all seen the cost of inflation, the cost of lumber alone to build housing, the cost of housing, 36% last year, was it? It's absurd. Those prices are skyrocketing. How about the loss of jobs? Alcoa, Heath Techna downtown. Things are going to get worse unless we get people that want to solve the problem. I don't think it's fear. I don't think our elected officials are afraid. I think that we have a majority that's lazy. And here, I'll give you an example of what I'm referring to. Last year, on average, we would spend $8 million between the county and the city every year on homelessness. Last year, we probably spent closer to $20 million because of all the commerce funds and the state funds. That's a rough guess estimate because I can't tell you what the actual number is because I have no idea the way those dollars come into us. They can't tell me. So we just don't know at this point, right? But here's an example where we spent those funds. We have a few hundred homeless people that we have already paid to retrofit a drop-in center with a drive-through ambulance location. They're sleeping indoors on mats. And we get a whole bunch of money from the state commerce department. And we say, oh, hey, we got to spend this really fast so we don't lose it. So instead of looking at what can we do to really solve the problem and have the best impact to help people get back on their feet, get out of homelessness, become self-sustaining, we say, let's go out and buy $1,600 bed frames. Bed frames
to give to people who are already sleeping inside on mats. I don't own a $1,600 bed frame, even if you include the mattress and the nightstands. That's absurd. That didn't increase the number of people we were helping. It didn't increase the number of people getting out of homelessness. It just wasted hundreds of thousands of dollars of our money. And that's just one example. I did put up the option of putting tiny houses instead, because that would have actually expanded the number of houses that we had available for people to sleep in last year. And we had a huge spike in people that were losing homelessness. A huge spike in elderly individuals who weren't able to pay their rent or their mortgage. And they knew that they couldn't be evicted, but because they were proud and they didn't want to ask for help, they would rather leave their house and not tell anyone and move into homelessness than ask a family member for help or to live there and not pay the owner of the house rent. There's a lot of drug addicts out there. We have a ton of different problems. The issue we run into is we're not looking at the data. We're not actually looking at, is what we're doing having a positive impact or not? I want to help people who want to help themselves at the end of the day. I want to help them get back into a productive life, become productive citizens, become taxpayers, become role models for the next person that becomes homeless, because it's an evolving cycle. But we have to get them back on their feet to do that, and we need better programs. We need better people leading our county with better ideas and better visions to get to that point. That's why Kamal and Nurse Nancy are so darn important. They are so darn important. Those type of things, I can give you 100 examples of those. Every one of them will pass, but wouldn't if we had one more person on the county council that actually wanted to put the time and effort into asking questions and thinking about the problem and the solutions. Like, I wish I could vote for Nurse Nancy. I wish she was here tonight to talk to it. I love the fact that Kamal is. God, I hope that you make it, because we need people like you and her on the council.
So, Mike,
that's Tyler Bird, and he's running for re-election District 3. Ken Bell, Port Commissioner, has a comment.
The bed frame is just the compassion without logic that I was just talking about, right? But secondly, I want you all to think about, how many of you have seen an increase in the price of your house? How many of you have seen it double? Where do you think your property taxes are going to go? Right? You may love the fact that you've got a twice the equity in your house that you used to have, but your property taxes there's going to be a reckoning. If you think we have people on the streets now, wait till the property taxes go. Because the assessment of the house that was a $250,000 house when you bought it for somebody on a fixed income is now $500,000. Your property taxes just doubled. Your mortgage payment, which includes your property taxes, just went up by the amount of that property taxes, right? So this boon that we've got in the real estate market may sound really attractive. There's going to be a reckoning. There are going to be more people displaced. There are going to be more people on fixed incomes or low incomes that are going to find it hard to make their payments. We have to be ready for it.
We have time for another question and maybe a bit more. I want to ask the Port Commissioners this question. One of the things we've seen evolve is the renaissance, if you will, of the former Georgia Pacific property. That is our big thing for the last number of years. I won't go into how many, but it's happening. My question is, to maybe leave this on a positive note, what do you envision the next big good thing that's going to happen both at the port, and if we have time, I'm going to ask County Council, what do you see, your crystal ball, what's the next big thing that's going to be good for Whatcom County and good for Whatcom County voters?
I'll go first, because that's actually one of the reasons that I decided to run for Port, is that I wanted to be involved in the development of the GP property. I want to, you know, for my background, I've run businesses all my life. I know what it is to spend $100 million on a project and have it be done in 6 weeks, and I know how to schedule and make sure that those projects are completed. I know what a P&L is, you know, and I know what it is to bring good contractors in and bring bring industry in, and so what I see with the Georgia Pacific property, and Ken's been working very hard on getting the contract rewritten with the current contractor down there, where the port's going to have more say in the development down there. So I see the hotel going in. I see a conference center going in, which I think would be great. I also see the port being a port. My crystal ball would say, or I would like to do, is have a working port again, which we really don't. I'd like to see those 400-foot ships come in and out of there and do some export-import type stuff. And Ken, I'm talking too much, but Ken's got a big crane down there now, and we need to use it. So, that's my crystal ball. Hopefully I can be a part of that.
I think Ken's okay with you carrying a little further on. That worked for him, I'm sure. Well, Ken, with 2 minutes remaining, I'll give the floor to you.
I've never done anything in 2 minutes. Okay, so the first thing that we've done, and this is just to let you know where we've been the last 4 years, we have put progress over politics. Politics has seemed to rule the day. We have broken down barriers where there used to be barriers. We could not improve port infrastructure because every permit that we filed to improve port infrastructure was challenged by the Lummi tribe. We broke down that barrier by striking an agreement with the Lummi tribe where they got moorage, which is something they needed. And we got the ability to repair infrastructure. The port sat for 20 years, dilapidated and in disrepair, until we struck that infrastructure agreement. It allowed us to do what we needed to do to repair our sawtooth dock, to put infrastructure in Blaine for the commercial fishermen. The reason I've got the commercial fishermen's endorsement is just that. The reason I've got the Lummi endorsement is because we worked with them to solve a problem we both had. When I talk about dialogue, this is what I mean. We can come together to fix these problems. We did the same thing on broadband. The pandemic made it impossible to get broadband to lay down. We had to strike private agreements with some of the private carriers to accomplish the goals. We got funding from other sources. Ziply is now serving in places that we thought we were going to get broadband, but we couldn't buy it. So we've got the POGO zone now going out to Deming. I may have the companies mixed up, but we've got broadband by private carriers going into the Nooksack tribe from satellite. We've got broadband going up Highway 9 into Deming because we struck an agreement. We broke down the barriers that we had. We broke down the barrier with the Marine Highway System to get container ships in, which just happened this year. Again, it's a matter of breaking down barriers and not politics.
To stay with our schedule with KG Meyer, radio listeners out there, we appreciate you tuning in tonight. Appreciate all the candidates. I want to give all of them a big hand. They did, I think, a terrific job. And I urge all the listeners, as well as those people here in the audience as well, like all elections, exercise your right in the United States of America to vote. You do have influence, and every vote does count. I know all these candidates would tell you just that. Thank you so very much. Thank you to Mr. Donahue and his organization, all those folks that helped put us together, as well as those who helped carry this forum out to other people throughout the county. We appreciate it. Have a good night, and let's hope the Seahawks are winning. Thank you so very much.